Dandavat pranams to all, Vishaka here, and I'm in Northern California at the moment, visiting Jamuna Priya Didi, who was one of our Gurudev's beloved personal servitors, and we have an amazing gathering with other stalwart devotees, Divi Shakti Didi and Sita, who was also a very special servitor of our Gurudev for many years in earlier years, and Madhura Priya Didi. So a really beautiful, nourishing meeting going on at the moment. And I'm recording this as part of our Bhagavad Gita series. A couple of weeks ago, we forgot to record, or I forgot to record, and this is the first 10 chapters of chapter 15. And I thought, to complete the series, I'll just record this separately. And three of the verses actually in these 10 are very well known and emphasized verses. So happy to be able to share that. So without further ado, we can start. So I'm on chapter 15, Purushottama Yoga, the Supreme Person. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdhva Dashakam Ashvatam Praharavyayam Chandam si yasya parnani yastam veda savedavit. The Supreme Lord said, it is said in the scriptures that this material world is like a peepal tree, roots up, branches down, endless yet transient. Its leaves represent the nourishing verses of the Vedas. One who knows this tree is a knower of the Vedas. Amazing verse, amazing. It gives us incredible imagery to convey the upside downness, let's say, of this material plane. And we heard our Gurudev quote this verse several times. And in fact, I had one dream with our, just, on a personal note, with our Gurudev, where he chanted this verse to me. And it was like, it felt like a hammer for illusion. Like, wake up, wake up. Don't be deceived by the shiny glamour of this world. Everything in this world, it's upside down. And it's a wonderful analogy, right? That this, because the analogy is that this tree, this peepal sacred tree of India, this peepal tree, it's rooted in the highest plane, but it's rooted in aversion. It's growing downwards, right? So it perfectly depicts our situation in this world, that our source, our motherland, so to speak, is that higher plane, but we're going away. We're moving away from that. But our real connection, our real source, our real origin, our real home is there. And so this reflection. It's very valuable for us. Don't be deceived. Everything in this world, it's upside down, right? And through the eye of Scripture, the saints, we are tuning our vision, right? In the same way that we're told, like the eyes actually receive images upside down and the brain corrects them. So it's like that. We're seeing things upside down, but the light of Shastra, of Scripture, is correcting, giving us what is the right vision. So, sometimes we become bewildered by the various attractions of this world and urges within ourselves, but we have to steady ourselves with this spiritual knowledge. So let's read this commentary. The roots of the tree of this world are said to face upwards. Its root cause is the highest plane. It is manifest by the potency of the Supreme Lord. However, it is rooted in aversion to the Lord. Its branches are said to face downward, since according to the law of karma, all species of life, from the highest to the lowest, branch out from it. It is known as an ashwata tree. The word ashwata means ephemeral, or that which does not remain in the same state for even a day. Yet it is endless, in the sense that it constantly appears in the natural flow of cause and effect. So this is the nature of this worldly plane, right? It is not a stable plane. It is always changing, always cycling. But at the same time, it is constantly appearing and reappearing, so it is endless in that sense. The leaves of the tree represent the fruitive verses of the Vedas, Karma Kanda, as the leaves of a tree nourish and beautify it. These verses similarly encourage and illuminate the world. So this expression, fruitive, I'm not sure it's always so clearly understood. The idea, when this phrase is used by our gurus and our texts, is that we are acting in a calculated way, expecting some particular fruit, some particular results. And so this section of the scriptures referred to the Vedas, known as Karma Kanda. It's catering people who are motivated by worldly desires. And so there's a strand of religion which is accommodating those people. So this tree, this tree representing mundane existence, is being beautified, is being made attractive by this type of, like alluring call of this section of the Vedas, this like promise of material bounty, joy, etc., fulfillment. So, that's like the motivating factor. That's what like covers the dark underbelly, you could say, of this world, the promise of mundane happiness, the false promise of mundane happiness, you could say. So as the leaves of a tree nourish and beautify it, these verses similarly encourage and illuminate the world. The external potency of the Lord Maya is eternal, and it manifests this world. Yet the world itself is perishable, inasmuch as it again becomes unmanifest. Although the fruitive verses of the Vedas provide its nourishment, their underlying purpose is rather to enlighten the conditioned souls, to take shelter of the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental to the mundane. Thus, one who knows these fundamental principles is a knower of the true essence of the Vedas. So this point is being made that although this section of the Veda is encouraging mundane activity, enjoyment, and so on, that's not the underlying purpose. The underlying purpose is to accommodate persons who have mundane desires and gradually bring them to a higher conception, higher aspiration. So this is why when we approach the various scriptures, it's necessary to come with the vision of a guide, right? And someone who has the broader vision. What's the overall picture that necessary to look at these things within context, right? Not isolate different sections and just appreciate them on their own standing, but see what is the overall context. Where is it that ultimately, what's the real trajectory? Where is it that all these sections of the Vedas ultimately want to take us? So this is why a guide is so important. Okay, so moving on to verse number 2 of chapter 15. Adashturdvam prashittasya shaka guna paridya vishaya pravalaha adascha mulan yanu satanta tani karmanubandini manushaloke. I'm going to read that again. I think I kind of screwed it up. Adashturdvam prashittasya shaka guna paridya vishaya pravalaha adascha mulanya nusantatani karmanubandini manushaloke. Some of it, so continuing this analogy of a tree, some of its branches extend upwards as the planes of the demigods and celestial beings. Some of the branches extend downwards as the planes of the humans, animals, and lower species. And nourished by three modes of nature, its shoots are the objects of the senses. Some aerial roots also extend downwards to take root in the land of karma within the human plane. We have another commentary. We can also remember that this edition of Bhagavad Gita, coming from our Gurudev and Param Gurudev, they don't include many commentaries. So when they do, you sit up and pay attention. There's something significant to be said here. Okay, so commentary. Within the expansive manifestation of this perishable yet endless world, some of the living beings are nourished by the mode of goodness, and they wander throughout the upper planes in the ego of gods and celestial beings. Others, influenced by the modes of passion and ignorance, are wandering throughout the planes of the humans, animals, trees, and lower species, assuming the identities of those species. The shoots of the tree of this world represent the objects of the senses: sound, smell, touch, taste, and form, as transformations of the 5 primary subtle elements, pancha tanmatra, produced from the ego of the living beings. The principal roots face upwards, inverted, indicating aversion to the Supreme Lord. Further, some aerial roots face downward, entering the land of karma in the human plane. These represent the human's attempt to enjoy the fruits of their actions, and these aerial roots nourish the tree as a separate secondary cause. Going on to verses 3 and 4. Narupam asyeha tato palabhyate, nanto na chadir na cha sampradishta, ashvatamenam suvidudamulam, asanga shastrena judena chitva, tatapadam tadpadimargitavyam, yasmingata na nivartanti bhuyaha, tameva chadyam purusham prapadye, yataparitti prashitaparani. In the human plane, this inverted form of the people tree of this material world is inconceivable without Vedic knowledge. Neither its beginning, nor its middle, nor its end can be perceived. From the association of devotees, one acquires the sharp axe of detachment from the mundane. Using this weapon to cut down that illusory tree of one's mundane existence, which is stubbornly rooted in aversion to the Supreme Lord, one attains to the plane of no return, which is the lotus feet of the Lord. With pure devotion, one should approach the holy lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Vishnu for shelter and pray, "I surrender unto the original person, the Supreme Lord of all, by whose illusory potency, Maya, this perpetual tree of the material world, has appeared." This is just wonderful. This is an incredible verse, 2 verses. And so again, this analogy of the tree is being elaborated, it's being developed. And this wonderful analogy is made of good association, saintly association, to a type of axe that can cut down this illusory tree, this tree of mundanity, basically. And there's also this interesting, what seems to be an interesting play on words, because the word shastra, right? It's used here in the Sangha Shastrena Jadena, this word Shastrena. So Shastra, it refers to scripture, right? But it also refers to a weapon. So it's very interesting, right? Like association with higher realization, with higher thought. It can be used as a type of weapon to detach ourselves, to cut our connection with mundanity, right? It's giving us the eye, giving us the vision, which gives us this strength, right, to remove ourselves, to cut ourselves off from all that is, obstructing our spiritual evolution. So I love this, and I love how this analogy is like developing more and more. And what else is here? It's really, really nice, these 2 verses. And then this spirit of surrender and devotion is being described following that. Okay. And this is what's funny, right? Because it's like everything's actually within us, right? Like the enemy is within. That's the interesting thing. It's not like something out there, right, that we have to, that is like an enemy attacking us, but it's within us. And that's what makes it more tricky. So it's, this illusory tree of our own mundane existence, that's what needs to be removed. Our own attachment, our own misconception, our own mundane prejudices. Okay, so let's go on. Verse number 5. Nirmana moha jita sangha dosha adhyatma nitya vinivitta kamaha dvandve vimukta sukha dukkha samgyer gachantya muda padam avyayam tat. Free from vanity and delusion, aloof to unholy association, dedicated to self-realization, desireless, liberated from the duality of joy and sorrow, undiluted, those surrendered souls reach the eternal goal. Natadvasayate suryo na shashanko na pavakaha yadgatva na nivartante tadama paramamama. It's a beautiful verse, this one, number 6, and we hear quoted often by our gurus. I'm going to chant it one more time. Natadvasayate suryo na shashanko na pavakaha yadgatva na nivartante tadama paramamama. The surrendered souls reach my eternal abode, never to return to this world. Neither sun, nor moon, nor fire, nothing can illuminate that all-illuminating supreme abode. So 2 main ideas are jumping out at me from this verse. One, the purity, the illumination of that divine abode is being conveyed here, right? It is so bright that all of the brightest, the greatest sources of illumination in this world that we are acquainted with, right? The sun, the moon, fire, they cannot illuminate that plane because it is so infinitely, so it is infinitely brighter. It is infinitely brighter, more illuminating than the greatest illuminating elements within our experience. So how pure, how bright, how illuminating is that divine plane? And then this other point here, which we won't go into too much because it's a bit of a can of worms. Some persons like to get into a whole debate about this, but it's also stated here clearly that the surrendered souls who attain that plane, it's the plane of no return. Once you enter, there's no coming back. This is a point of confusion sometimes amongst our communities, that it's possible for souls from that plane to again come to this world. But this is clearly stated by our gurus, and is also stated here in Bhagavad Gita clearly. There's no coming back. Yad gatva na nivartante. Having attained that, there's no return from there. Once you've tasted some, like one way our Gurudev expressed it, the point is that, there will be no need and no desire, right? Once you've tasted that sweetness, that beauty, that love, how can one return to anything else? Okay, we'll go on to verse number 7. And this 7 is another well-known, often quoted verse. And helpful verse, very helpful for understanding, for conveying these teachings to others also. Mamaivamsho jivaloke jivabhuta sanatanaha manashashchanindriyani prakriti stani karshati. The soul is a particle, potency of mind. Although it is eternal, for worldly existence, it adopts the 5 mundane senses and the mind, which is the 6th. So here the Lord is clearly stating, right, that, the souls of this world, they belong to me. They are a part of me, right? They're one of my energies, and they are spiritual as I am. But then when they enter this world, it's like they're actually adopting this covering, right, of the mundane body, mind, and senses. It's, we could think of it as something like a spacesuit that we need to navigate a foreign environment. That's actually what's going on, right? In order to have any type of standing in this mundane existence, which is a foreign atmosphere for us, actually. We are adopting this mundane covering. So it's very clear the way the Lord, Mamai Vamsha, they're a part of me. Right? They're an extension of me. So it's very clear, very helpful verse, understanding what is our real identity. Let's get rid of this spacesuit. We don't need it anymore. We won't need it there, right? And we don't need it here, actually, either. It's just what we are identifying with. That's all it is, identification. And actually, in our Zoom meeting, we had this really interesting, when we were going through these verses in the meeting that I didn't record, we had an interesting discussion with our group about identity, right? And this verse was quite inspiring in that sense, that because this is something I've been contemplating recently, how we're all actually searching more than almost anything else, underlying everything, underlying all of our desires and endeavors in this world. There's this need, like more fundamental to almost anything, is this need that we have for a sense of identity, right? How actually, like, we can be happy in any mode of life depending upon what we're identifying with, right? Like, I know of people who are extremely wealthy, but they don't identify with that. Like, the wealth kind of came accidentally or as a result of their family, right? Inheritance, like through circumstance. It wasn't that they strived for it. It wasn't that they wanted it. And they suffer as a result. It alienates them from others. They feel guilt about it. They don't identify with that. And then the opposite is also true, right? Persons who are poor and they don't identify with that. They identify with a more comfortable, opulent way of life, and they feel shame about being poor and so on. And they strive, for more wealth in their lives, right? And this is in every sphere, right? Race, right? There are persons who may be white and proud, persons may be white and shameful about that, feel shame about that. Persons who are black and proud, persons who are black and they feel some that they are less because of that. It's all about identity, right? We're all seeking a sense of identity. Look at different lifestyles and cultures. There's a whole ghetto culture, right? Look at different genres of music that's been inspired by that, and there's a pride in that, right? Then there's a whole culture around, living a very different lifestyle, right? So many. So this is what's underlying everything, the search for identity, the need for identity. What do we identify with, right? And so here, and this verse is very beautiful. And I think one comment that came up in our group was, it's almost like the Lord in this verse, he's like claiming us. Like there's a sense of guardianship that's here. You're mine. You belong to me. I belong to you also. Mama's my. Mamai Vamsha. The souls are part of me. So there's this sense of identity that's here, in a comforting sense, in this home sense. This is that, right? This is the highest identity that we hold within us, right? And that is our identity. It's just a matter of identifying with that identity, right? And then, as I'm recalling in our meeting, we had a very organic discussion where everyone, there was kind of like a thread that was developing, and everyone was adding another piece of the puzzle. And then another point which came out in our group was the importance of community, right? That having a solid community helps us with the identity that we are striving for, right? So having the association, having a community of like-minded, spiritually minded persons helps, reinforces the spiritual identity which we are nurturing within ourselves, or awakening within ourselves. Okay, so we can go on then to verse number 8. Shariram yadavapnoti yakchapyutkramati Vitvaitani samyati vayorgandani vashayat. The soul is the master of the body. When it departs the body, it goes to enter another, carrying these subtle senses, as the wind carries fragrance from its source. So when these bodies die, right, the physical bodies die, then there's the subtle body, material subtle body, that is carried on to enter the other, and it's carrying these senses and these desires and so on. We don't get off so easy, right? Not that when we die it all ends, but we're carrying with us what we've gathered from our previous lives, those impressions and desires and so on. Verse 9, Shotam chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam ganameva cha adishtaya manaschayam vishayanupasevate. Presiding over the ear, eye, skin, tongue, and nose, and also the mind, the living entity enjoys the sense objects of sound, form, touch, taste, and smell. And then one final point that came out in our meeting too, related to this, was how, we're all seeking rasa, right? We're all seeking taste, fulfillment, joy. And that's just natural. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it. That's just natural. But the problem is that search at present is that natural search of the soul, right, is being corrupted because it's coming through the filters of our mundane layers of existence. So that natural search of the soul for rasa, right, it's mentioned in where is it? The Upanishads, raso, vaisa. The nature of the spirit is rasa. And we're naturally searching for rasa. But the problem is right now it's coming through these layers. So the soul is expressing this desire, this search, but it's coming through these perverted filters. And so we're searching for it in the mundane, right? In the finite. And that can never satisfy us. So Shrinvantu Vishve Amritasya Putra, right? This is the call of the Veda. Like, redirect your search. Don't cancel the search. Just redirect it. Redirect that natural thirst to the higher plane, our higher source. The real object of our search should be that higher plane. So at the moment we're through because the senses enjoy this plane. The senses enjoy the sense object. So there's some type of enjoyment, which is like tiny little scrap, right, compared to spiritual enjoyment of the soul contacting the Lord and its relationship with the Lord. So, one point that came up from one of our members in the meeting was how, there can be this guilt among spiritual practitioners about enjoyment. But that's completely unnecessary. It's actually so natural to seek enjoyment. It's just we're searching in the wrong place. That's the problem. One last verse. Verse 10. Utkramantam stitam vapi bhunjanam va gunam vitam Vimudananu pashyanti, pashyanti ganachakshushaha. Those who are thus deluded cannot see the soul when it is departing the body, residing in the body, or when enjoying through the senses in the body. Those with the eyes of wisdom can see. Okay, so I think we'll stop there, just filling in the gap on our Bhagavad Gita series. And gratitude to all of you who are giving me your good association, which is always so much needed. Jai Shri Guru Deva ki Jai, Jai Shri Guru Dev, Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai.